fancy intro music. Yeah! Woo!
Welcome back, Star Trek Fleet Command fans. Today we're going to talk about Chang. In fact, you might be surprised, as so many times we've talked about officers from the olden days not being worth it that more, but there's actually some really neat niche uses for this Klingon favorite.
Cry havoc, and let's slip the dogs of war.
From Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, which, by the way, arguably the second best Star Trek movie ever. If you think it's the best, comment down below, or if you don't, tell me why. But all that said, I want to talk about uses here. This could be a video where we've talked a lot recently about mid-levels and lower levels. This one's going to be for especially our G5 and G6 players, and even G7. In fact, we'll definitely include some G7 screenshots here at the end when we can talk about hostile grinding. But the power of what Chang can provide, and it's good for anybody to learn these type of methods, because it's nice to have these things that, when we have very difficult groups to go after, for example, Outposts, which is what a lot of today's video is going to cover. Well, how can we have effect against that? How can we have strength against? What are some different things that we can do that are maybe out of the norm, but can be very effective? Well, Chang is one of those. So first off, let's actually talk about what he does, and then we can go into deeper examples of showing him being effective. So this is an officer that came out a long time ago, which is why many people probably don't consider him very often when it comes to crewing. He's also always had a very unique ability. Now, to be clear, in this video, I'm not going to bore you with like all the specific math and all the specific examples, but what we're really looking at is you have two abilities. You have the captain's ability, which is Cry Havoc. As long as the opponent's ship whole health is under 6%, increases the damage of the weapons by 10%. That's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on the officer ability. Dogs of War. If the ship deals a critical hit to the opponent's ship while it has a hull breach, Chang has a 50% chance of delaying the next weapon attack by 1 round. Now, here's the thing. There's some trickiness with this in terms of how exactly it works. So for number one, to keep in mind that when Chang does the weapons delay, because it's a 1 round delay, it's very specific about what he can delay. As in, if it's got, for example, you're fighting a hostile that has 4 weapons, depending on what weapon activates Chang, as in like when we've started the process, maybe you only delay weapon 2 next round or weapon 3. But if the weapon 2 doesn't fire next round, it's not getting delayed because it doesn't fire next round. Are you confused yet? Yeah, probably. But that's okay, because we have some handy dandy graphics that myself and Sudo, one of our amazing volunteers, have put together that we can put on the screen now to give you an example of how this works. So let's focus on basics, not the confusing stuff of how scopely math sometimes is hard to understand without a PhD. But number one, you need hull breach active on the target. Easy enough. You can do that with officers like Lorca, which you saw on my boat. You can do it with officers like Gorkon, which you get access to way back in the early 20s of the game. You're causing hull breach, which is simply a status effect on the opponent. After that, you have a 50% chance after activating a crit. So now we know we need criticals, which 2 main officers that most players are going to have access to. Number one, Khan, slightly worse option because he does require your ship to get punched first. So for example, in an outpost, you can't guarantee that your ship that has Chang is going to be the one getting hit, especially if you have worked up to having 4 ships in an outpost or even 3. Even if you're down to 2, that's still a 50-50 shot of whether you're getting hit, depending on how the battle triangle is spawning. So we need that. More shots per weapon gives you more chances to activate though. So another key element to this is a really good strategy for ships that have more shots. Not a good strategy if you don't have a lot of shots. Talking about you, level 70 epics. Sorry, Crenshaw owners. This is not the design I'm recommending for you. Not at all. But flip side of that, Crenshaw owners, Borg Cube owners, Chang works really well with you. So, okay, if you have a Crenshaw, use that as your other ship. Chang can go on your main. We'll show you some examples of that here in a minute. So number 3, once he's active, he is going to increase the reload time of the enemy weapon that fires in that round. So then you can stack this multiple times, so you can proc him multiple times. Again, it's a 50% chance for each shot. So if you have a ship that fires 6 times with 1 weapon in 1 round, that's 6 chances to activate, right? So money says you're going to get it. Now, which weapon it delays will depend on when the activation actually occurs. Let's actually look at some math and some graphics. To show you how effective it can be, actually, I could just show you some battle logs of me running things and show you simulated Galors. You'll see me running this right here. So what is this hopefully going to give us. In particular, in these fights where you have to go against an outpost which has 72 hostiles in addition to defeating the outpost itself, you're trying to save yourself longevity, right? So if you can delay this by 1 round, by just a few shots from the opponent each time, that's going to give you more survivability. The real key to Outpost is survivability, which by extension, interceptors are going to have a natural weakness because they don't tend to have as much hull health as, say, a battleship. Another reason that something like a Borg Cube could be really, really good with a Chang loadout is it already has more hull health than your typical ship is going to have if you primarily went into interceptors or using a GS-31, something like that. And if you can delay shots from it, that means it's naturally going to put out less damage. So in this screenshot instance, I wanted to get away from Outpost real quick, especially to show our higher levels a crew that can be very effective for hostile grinding with the same idea. I think you can kind of understand that if we can delay fights and push things down the road in terms of pushing the enemy's shots down the road, how effective that can be in Outpost, but what also about using it in regular grinding? Well, in fact, one thing we've talked about a lot recently is how in G7 and in other higher parts of the game, using Chang, Sudo, Seska is arguably the top crew available. That is assuming you have Wrath of Khan Carol below decks, which we did a video on that, which we can plug at the end of this one. But the idea is the same. We're trying to delay shots, and anything that can put out a lot of shots is better. Now, does that mean the Vengeance is the best for this? Well, it's better than a Crenshaw, right? Again, Chang is proccing based on how many times you can crit, right? So if you've got Mazriad Vael below decks, Borg Q below decks, we're getting criticals. Now we just need that activation, which delays the round, right? So let's look at some more of these graphs that we talk about, how we can take advantage of this type of firing pattern. Let's say you have 4 player weapons, 4 hostile weapons. On the screen, you can see how the delay mechanic can work. So instead of 4 weapons firing every round in the example that you see on the screen, you'll see a staggered pattern where after 10 rounds of a fight, like a regular hostile run can be, they'll only have to fire 22 times versus 40 times. Well, a reduction of 18 total shots is a significant reduction in the amount of damage you're going to take in that 10-round period. Some of these hostile fights can last that length. Now, we're only trying to shave off 1 or 2 shots, maybe a couple more in an outpost run. But as you can see here with the math, if you can do the same thing in a regular hostile run, assuming again below decks, which is very important here, we're able to stretch fights longer. And to be clear, this isn't something that you can just use as a G7 player. You just saw my outpost mechanic using it at G6. You can also use this in G5 depending on what you're fighting. Now you might run into an instance where other crews are simply better, right? You don't need to run this yet. Maybe you're running, Janeway, EMH Doc, and Anorax. It's still going to probably be your best crew in shorter fights for the standard run. Big key here is what ship are you using? And when you're getting into the higher levels of the game, like G6, G7, a lot of the firing patterns for the ships are just not very good. So that's just something that you're going to have to play with. So Chang might not be the best set for you, but there are definitely some situations where he is complicated, but sometimes awesome, as Sudo like to put it when we're having our conversation. And I absolutely agree with that. If you can delay the firing of some of these weapons, long-term in Outpost, that means you survive more of the fights, which ends up returning more plunder to you. In the case of punching up really high with a G7 account, well, that means that you can hit hostiles that maybe you were struggling with before and get a few more runs out of that, which is less repair trips. And that's a win, right? It saves you time and technically saves you precious Sigma materials. So Chang is very unique. This is not something I would recommend if you're a player in the 30s looking for a hostile crew. But for those of you who are out there looking for a way to maybe improve your outpost mechanic and maybe improve your high G6 and G7 hostile grinding, Chang is an officer to consider because of the ability to do things like delay the effect of the target, which can be very useful. There's also other niche officers, like we can talk about the value of 111 in a different video, but really focusing in on this guy and how good he can be. If you're curious about more tips and tricks like this, hit up our Discord or message me privately on Discord, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever you call it these days. And I'll be right there to help you out because we really enjoy giving you answers to make the game easier. Live long and plunder. Stay safe for the Space Cowboys. Deuce, that's me. Catch you in the next Star Trek Flick Man video. We're wrapping it up.
I would like to request to Scopely to add more Klingons to the game. That is what I was told to do And so I am doing it, which, you know, is not maybe the best thing as a leader to just do what you're told, but it seems like a good request to make to add more Klingons. Everything is better with Klingons, am I right? I am right, because I'm a Klingon. Klingon mach tach judge! We are Klingons, let it remain. All right, Rel's on a roll today. She's very excited.